we as trans people are being disenfranchised from every public area, including sports, not only professional sports, but school age sports, college sports, sports at the intermediate level, and then in elementary school and all club sports, like everywhere. Hey y'all, welcome back to Queer 101, the podcast where we talk about any and everything under the sun, including queer art, queer culture, queer literature, and whatever the hell we want. I'm Peppermint.
And I'm Hugh Ryan, aka Hugh the Historian.
Hey Hugh, how you doing?
I am so good, Pep. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Thank you.
I'm glad to hear it, because I am
I'm
excited to be back here. I want to be continuing our discussion from a couple weeks ago, because I believe that, besides having fun, lively, timely discussions, part of our job here is to remind our listeners and watchers about queer history. We don't learn it in schools, and we depend on learning it from other methods, like our podcast.
Exactly, baby. I mean, we're probably doomed to that because they're dismantling other forms of education and information everywhere under the sun.
We even have a Department of Education anymore?
Hello. So it's not only important to know our history and the stories of those who literally blaze the trails for us, but it's really exciting and empowering. So I agree with you 100%. And I'm glad we get to continue our conversation about the legend Audre Lorde.
Oh, yes. If you're just tuning in right now, you didn't hear our previous episode, our initial conversation on Audre Lorde. Quick recap for you. Audre Lorde was a writer, professor, philosopher, intersectional feminist before intersectional was even a term we knew, poet, civil rights activist, a self-described Black, lesbian, feminist, socialist, mother, warrior, poet, who dedicated her life and talent. Socialist? Yes, indeed. I love how she writes about going, well, we'll get there, but how she writes about going to Russia. Fascinating. But she was confronting all of the forms of injustice and oppression at the same time and taking them apart in her seminal book, Sister Outsider, which we have this beautiful, gorgeous reissue of. I love it.
Yeah, and before we go any further, if you are interested in this book and you're listening to the podcast, then please feel free to go over to allstora.com where you can listen to not only interviews with authors that we've reviewed, but you can check out our book club, which is Queer History 101. And of course, we dive into this book and many, many, many books. And you should check that out immediately and become a member of the book club. So, I'm really excited to peel back. I mean, she's so layered, and her work and her being is, I just feel like there's an opportunity to invoke Audre Lorde pretty much to meet any moment. And there's a lot of moments that we're in right now.
Oh yeah, and so many like perfect quotes that she is just speaking to like exactly what we're going through. And I love how many times I come across her in the world already, you know, the master's tools will not dismantle the master's house, your silence will not protect you. It's like we have embedded her in our culture in a way that like is so rare for a Black lesbian socialist poet foremother, you know? But I think that it gets even better, even deeper when you actually read her writing, not just the quotes, which are great, and they capture something essential in each one. But when you actually read these essays, I think we could do like an entire season on Sister Outsider alone. But I want to jump in today to one in particular that has been really staying with me, that I have found myself thinking a lot about the last few weeks. The one where she talks about the power of erotics. Erotics. I love that we are talking about erotics and eroticism and desire as like political forces, as things that move us forward. Lorde says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that as queer people, power comes from our erotics, the way in which desire can lead people to or from the closet and into the community they need to be in, into the relationships they need to be in, into the self that they need to be in. It's so smart, and it's so real to the experiences, I think, of like every queer person, particularly if you're isolated from queer life and the queer world. It's like our bodies at least tell us what we want, and they move us towards things in ways like an internal compass.
I'd say maybe our bodies even use that compass to direct us towards what we need, in addition to what we want. Especially if it is community, if it is, I mean, even on the erotic level, a sexual level, it is companionship at best. It's companionship. It is intimacy and physical touch, which are
Mhm.
things like quite literally the human body needs. But beyond that, talking about community and talking about sort of a political framework, talking about experiencing, uh, you know, empowerment through feminism or, what have you. There's so many different ways that eroticism and self-empowered sexualization can lead
Mhm.
us to what we need and want. Um, and it's really interesting the sort of like as opposed to what we've learned in this sort of puritanical existence in
Mhm.
America and probably in what they would call Western Eurocentric culture, is that the erotic is something to be not talked about, to be publicly shamed, and then
Mhm. To
privately
be feared and
overindulged in, as we're seeing with the Epstein files. And that's not even
Mhm.
eroticism, but I think that there's people that's abuse and pedophilia. But there's this like light versus the dark, daytime versus nighttime,
Mhm.
sort of titillation about eroticism, wanting to stamp it out and attack it and frame it as something that's just inhuman.
Yeah.
Eroticism. I want to be very clear. I'm talking about eroticism, I'm not talking about anything in the Epstein files,
Mhm.
since I brought it up. Um, but it is obviously a part of humanity and human nature. Sexuality, sexualization, sexual connection,
Yeah.
is a part of human nature.
It is, and I think it's so like telling that so many of these folks, like these conservative activists who hate queer people, who hate women, also hate
Are the
their
first one to
own
get their,
erotics.
yeah, they are
It's
the
like,
first one to get caught with their whatever.
yeah, oh, they're doing terrible things, but they will stand up there and say, "Oh no, sex should only be for reproduction," right? Even publicly, they're talking, but they want to deny their own desire, their its own existence, while they're out there
Yeah,
doing all of these awful things. And I think sometimes the awful things come about in part because you're denying it, that you've squished so much of your desire down
of
into a
course.
terrible
It's
box.
repression. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. It is oppression. But it also goes to the like, do as I say, not as I do. And
Hmm.
maybe that is like, obviously it's control, moral, like control. But like, everything it says that they like that they tell poor people or the people that they are extracting resources from not to do is so that they
Hmm.
can hoard whatever it is that they're telling people not to do.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. They
don't
keep it
go
all
by
for
the river
themselves
and
on a
drink
private
water. The
island.
water is outlawed. And then at night, they're drinking up all the water.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that the more that you sort of accept, acknowledge, or at least that I accept and acknowledge my desires, my erotics, it becomes harder
Uh-huh.
to live as a divided self. It becomes harder to do that kind of thing. The more that you accept, like, these are the things I need in my life, that my body needs to feel good and happy and safe, community, sensuality, sexuality, erotics, the harder it is to kind of live that divided life where publicly you say one thing and then privately you do this other awful thing. And I think
I
that's one of the
agree.
things. Yeah, I think Lorde is so smart in the ways that she takes something that I think in the 70s, when she was writing a lot of these essays, it was like either sexuality was evil, bad,
Which is what we're told constantly and is reinforced.
yep, or it was party, drugs, unserious, do whatever you want. And she's
Which is
looking
what
at the
happens for
erotics.
people who get a hold of this inevitable force, sexual force, without having pre-thought it, without understanding how to, or maybe without taking the time to figure out a way to implement it. I just feel like it's, if you're so repressed and then you finally get that thing you want, you're going to go crazy with it, and then it turns into
Yeah.
something that feels hedonistic, you
And they can
know?
really fuck you up. It can go from being that like
Yeah.
guide that takes you to what you need and into something that really like takes you places you have a hard time recovering from.
Yeah.
Which
And I
she
I want to at least be on the same page. Like, my thought of when I think of eroticism, especially after having read Audre, is that where she's talking about a connection that could certainly a connection to one's body, a connection to one's body and the functions of one's body, and sharing that with other people through erotic, thoughts and pleasures and things like that. That is just a norm. That's how our bodies function. That is what we do as humans, right?
Hmm.
One of the things that we do as humans, and not necessarily sort of like a moral judgment on sex as we hear from a lot of puritanical,
Hmm.
right wing, you know, traditional, heteronormative, repressed, whatever. And that it doesn't have to be hedonistic, even though a lot of people associate the word erotic with, you know, overindulgence, sexual,
Hmm.
like, depravity.
Yeah.
And it's not. That's not even in using the word erotic, it's sort of reclaiming it, in a way, I think through her work.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. She doesn't place a moral judgment on sensuality and sexuality. She does place a moral judgment, I think, on mutuality or the lack thereof. That's the line where erotics becomes abuse, right? If the other person doesn't
Yes.
want it, if they're not a full human as well.
Okay, so I'm glad you're talking about that because I'm thinking about, okay, here we go. Sit back. Here we go. One second.
No, come on, bring it on, bring it on.
So like I love being able to juxtapose, or like think of eroticism as this liberating thing, as this thing that's almost what's necessary for full liberation as humans, as people who are, especially in, again, Western Eurocentric culture, where we're dealing with,
Hmm.
white supremacy and, capitalist exploitation of Black and brown bodies and the poor. Sex, religion versus sex has historically been used to control and shame, and abuse and plunder and pillage and all the other things, and rape.
Yeah.
Um, in the modern world, more like, like past few hundred years, rather, at least in America, when as America was when young and forming, um, you know, we hear so many. I can't help but think of so many stories about, like, the slave master who, obviously does horrible things to his enslaved people that he has ownership over, at least socially. And then at night is sneaking into the room and impregnating
Hmm.
all of the women. And, that was a pattern. And that's, it's like, that's going to happen. And that's just not just with American, chattel slavery. I'm sure that's happened. Sexual slavery is a thing that's probably coupled with enslavement for millennia. But, and it's really interesting that, I'm still trying to figure out where my mind sits with all of this. I'm processing, and I'm so grateful for uh, Audre's words on eroticism, um, as I position it as a necessary in the list for liberation. But I'm still trying to process, you know, because as someone who, and I'm wondering if you've had this experience as well as a queer person. I'm not sure if you have a history of connecting sexually with people who didn't identify as queer.
Hmm.
Uh, but certainly as a trans person and as a Black trans woman, the notion of being fetishized, by oftentimes, almost always, by people who are in a position to oppress us, um, or at least benefit from the same type of oppression and violence that the state puts on us. They benefit on the other side of that. So, like, as a leftist, you know, um, progressive Black woman who's queer and trans, oftentimes the people who fetishize people like me are white, traditional, Republican, whatever, obviously heterosexual. men, and or at least that's what I've discovered over the years, and it's a pattern, and it also fits with a lot of my girlfriends, and so that connection there, that is an erotic draw,
Mhm.
but it doesn't lead to liberation.
No.
And I'm still trying to kind of parse through a lot of that. On the other hand, I do believe that ultimately it can. I'm not arguing, that it's
Mhm.
not and that it doesn't, but I just think that it can be. We have to be careful with how it's used. We have to think about how we connect with eroticism, because as I think back to Isabel Wilkerson's
Mhm.
cast, Origins of Our Discontent, and her findings and writings about the pillars of the caste system and the anti-endogamy laws that were implemented not only in the United States, but then, or in America and on this continent in the United States, and then also in pretty much everywhere that there's a caste system that's implemented. Not sexual relations with the underclass are always forbidden, because eventually it leads to love and empathy for that person, and
Mhm.
then wanting to bring them into, lift them out of the lower caste that they've been placed into. And so I know that I just said a whole lot, but yeah, it has me thinking about
Yeah,
all of
no, no,
this. Can we
me
talk about
too. I
it?
mean, I'm glad you brought that in because to me, where my mind immediately went is what you said right at the beginning, the importance of Lorde as a socialist. Because I think
Uh-huh.
that part of the erotics that she's talking about, or part of the good uses of the erotics, or where erotic moves out of abuse and sexualization and into these kinds of like mutuality you're talking about, is that I,
Uh-huh.
you can't have true erotics when one person has much fewer options and is controlled and
Yeah.
does not have power. And so I think
Yeah.
Lorde, in order to embrace erotics and let everyone embrace erotics, has to at the same time fight for a world in which we all have freedom and liberation and our
Uh-huh.
basic needs met. And we're not afraid that if we break up with our boyfriend, he's going to kill us, or he's going to out us, or
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
all of those things. Like they twist the eroticism. It's like the more, and you know what? I'm not saying like BDSM isn't real. Power dynamics can be sexual. All of this within the space of the bedroom and the consensual. You can do even things that appear non-consensual and have them be hot and erotic for everyone involved. But when there are true power differentials where one person, like you're talking about with caste, is in a truly different caste, the other person has the control. And until that is equalized, then the erotics are always not necessarily abusive, but on the line. They're ready to be abused. If one person
Uh-huh.
starts to
Uh-huh.
feel like this, they're not getting what they want out of this, they can't leave. While the other one, if they start to feel like they're not getting what they want out of this, they can control it and take what they want. And so, like for the erotic to be truly liberated, we also have to have a certain degree of like socialism and equality. I think that's for me where I think about Lorde's work sitting, the connection between like true erotics and socialism.
I think that makes sense, because in the world of like people being fetishized, and obviously using erotics and eroticism um as a tool or a conduit, that people are continually sort of held back, or at least they're allowed, can express themselves sexually, but it doesn't feel like it's necessarily the most loving and free and liberated way. Maybe that has to do with the fact that those people, maybe both of them, like you said, don't feel either mutually or on their own liberated to begin with. Like if someone feels so repressed that they have to be like quiet about it, and if someone's fetishizing someone, then there's maybe that person, the person doing the fetishizing, doesn't feel free to express that portion of themselves publicly anyway. And that's
Yeah.
a form of oppression and repression that manifests itself in sort of this abusive fetishization of the other person, which is obviously not liberating, um, through eroticism. And so maybe that's one way to look at it, is that like, the other systems have to be sort of addressed and broken down in order for that erotic connection to really be able to be as liberating as it could be, you know?
Yeah. And I think the like other direction holds true as well. Like in Sammy, Audre Lorde talks about how like she's like talking about being part of like lesbian communities in New York City with black and white women together. And she makes a really strong point to be like, look, it's not like we solved racism. We did not. But because we were women together, all of us oppressed, though in different ways, who truly loved each other, we worked harder at it than any other community I saw at that time. Our erotics insisted that we try to empower each other, even when we failed, even though we were in these situations that were beyond our control, even though we had been socialized to be racist, to be misogynistic, but that the erotics that, like you said, that the cast book, you know, the wanting to draw someone else out. When you see you love someone, you want them to have what you have. And I think Lorde talks about lesbian communities in the 50s in New York as being one of those places where I think she learned the lesson that she then writes into the uses of the erotic. It's that the erotic can bring you together, and then what do you do from there, right? You either try to make each other more equal, try to make each other better and stronger, or you fetishize the other person and you take what you want and you leave them. And we kind of have to decide which way we go, but the erotics help us to see where at least that connection could be, maybe.
Yeah, and that it you know, allows people to I mean, it's the one thing that really allows, maybe not the only thing, but it's certainly a major component that allows people to see a possibility for themselves outside of whatever they're dealing with. And oftentimes it is like, I hate overusing the word oppressive, but, you know, restrictive.
But we're overly oppressed in this world right now.
Yeah.
It's the right word.
So how do we connect that to like modern day? You know, I mean, I did a little bit with, I mean, even in my own personal experience, but where do you see this playing out?
Okay, this is ridiculous, and please feel free to laugh at me. But have you watched Heated Rivalry yet?
Of course, I've watched Heated Rivalry. Who hasn't? I mean, it's a hit.
It is. I tried to resist. I did. I don't know why. I had that sort of knee-jerk. Does this ever happen to you where like everybody loves something and you know you're gonna love it? And you're
all
like,
the
no.
time. All the time.
I was like, no, I'm not watching it. Whatever. I don't care. So they're hot. Whatever. Hot gay sex. I don't care. And then I sat down and I watched it. And of course, it's wonderful and it's sweet and there's so much in it that I love. But I was thinking about it as I watched it. And I was thinking about Audre Lorde, and I found the most erotic moment in that entire show was none of the sex scenes, though they were all really hot. Nothing against those boys, super sexy. Whoever was the intimacy coach on that show did like a fantastic job.
Was working overtime, honey.
Yes, indeed.
They were intimate.
That moment they were in a lot of positions. Every time it would fade to black, and I'd think they were done, and then we'd be like, "Oh no, we're just going doggy style now." But in the first episode, there's this moment where the two leads are sitting around after I forget if it's a practice or a showcase or something, and they're in the gym, and they're just looking at each other, and they pass a water bottle back and forth, and their hands
right after they're
brush each
working
other.
out.
Yeah, and how erotic it was, just that touch that signifies the possibility of more to come, you know, that there is a level at which they're connecting. Like all the stuff that comes after that is hot and amazing and sexy, but they already know by that point kind of like what they want from each other sexually if they're still figuring out their lives. But it's in that moment of just the sensual stroking of a finger that leads them to connect with one another and to be what they are, it opens the door for everything that comes after it. And
the extending of the hand is vulnerable, it's open, but it's also the sharing of both of their mouths on the same nozzle is also extremely erotic as well.
Yes,
like, you know, the
thing.
actual drinking of the bottle.
And the water and their sweat, they're so sweaty and messy. They're so physical. Their bodies are really there. You know they smell and it's hot. Like you can't deny the body in that scene. Okay. The hotness, that's debatable.
Okay, I watched it.
But I'm just saying it's that little bit of desire that sparks everything that comes from it. And so I was thinking about Audre Lorde and I was like, that's the moment. There's the erotics. There's the sensuality that opens up all of this possibility, even though they should be enemies.
And these
it
are two
opens
people
up a
that are
door.
should be enemies. They're both closeted for,
Mhm.
all intents and purposes. And no spoilers, but like it obviously leads them to both consider coming out of the closet. I'll say that much.
Mhm.
And, going from passing a water bottle to considering coming out on a national stage, is that, that eroticism that brings, that at least sets them on that path. So you're right, because it wasn't, no spoilers again. It could blossom into love or not, but it certainly wasn't love at the beginning, especially since they were
No.
rivals, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that's true. I also do think, I mean, not to overthink, but like I do think about Heated Rivalry, the success of Heated Rivalry, and you know, the erotic nature of the show of the series, which it is, no doubt,
Mhm.
right off the bat, and how much the assumingly hetero straight white women are watching, Midwestern white women
Mhm.
seem to be watching and like eating this up. That is a big like story component to the story that people
Yeah.
have been talking about in conversation, is how much of a hit it is. It's not just with like the queer community, not with gay men, but way outside of that as well. Um, and that erotics are clearly a part of that. So for the people who might otherwise be like voting against that couple in real life,
Mhm.
they're consuming this
Yeah.
rabidly, which is really
And it was
interesting
written
to
by a
me.
straight woman too, right?
Yeah. Um, and it's also interesting that like, what's acceptable when it comes to queer, sex and sexuality on it, because
Mhm.
if this show had been an all black cast, it would never have been a hit.
Oh no. No. It probably wouldn't have been made.
No, it would have been made because we have P Valley, we have stuff like this on black stations and black channels. And so we have these types of things. It just isn't supported or like just celebrated or like indulged in the same way. It's just, I think it's just not seen as universal, which
Mm.
is also really interesting to me because there are other shows that have a predominantly black cast that, have predominantly black storylines about predominantly the black cast.
Mhm.
Um, and experiences that are, maybe particular to like that demographic or like that area or what this, this city or that place, but they're not that, they are universal. When you talk
Yeah.
about sex and love and conflict, that's universal. And so it's not like it's in some language that nobody understands. And so it is
No.
interesting to me that it's not
But I do
as
think it's
supported.
Heated Rivalry is set in a world of like, for lack of a better word, like a place where straight people feel comfortable. It's sports. It's not just sports, it's
Mm-hmm.
elite sports. And it's rich people. Everybody's house is beautiful. It's
Oh
a,
my God, they're
like,
so rich.
okay, everyone. It's never discussed. And it's like, I think that's another
Yeah, it's
level
just,
at which,
it is
like,
what it is.
yeah, when I say that it wouldn't get made with black people in those roles, I think part of that is about like those straight white women who are watching it and writing it, like, cannot imagine black people in those roles having those lives and a whole show that is just about them, whereas they can, for some reason, I don't know why exactly, I mean, racism is the obvious answer, but like, why can they jump to fetishizing gay people that they might hate? It's like, where does the fetishization, where does it let them go and where does it stop them from going, I guess is the question. And do you think, and this is a question
Mm.
for you, do you think that the straight white women watching this are fetishizing it in the same way that like a rich white heterosexual man might fetishize a black trans woman? Are they, I'm curious what you think.
I don't. I mean, yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I don't really have that much experience in talking with these types of women that might be watching this show, so I'm curious to hear what they would say for themselves. But I do think that I've seen some of the analysis on the straight women's connection to Heated Rivalry, and that they're able to experience sex and lust and all these things on this TV show without feeling like they are at the center of it as women, that they are being, I guess I don't remember exactly what the person said that I read, their analysis on it, but basically saying that, like, when they see themselves on screen, if you see yourself on screen, that's great. But if you see yourself on screen being abused or tortured, it doesn't feel that good and you can't go into it. Not that anybody's necessarily abused and tortured physically on Heated Rivalry, but there is a sort of fraught torture by people who are in the closet and by people who are feeling like they have to choose between their career and their connection to somebody that they are into, or whatever it is. Are they actually gay or not? Like, I'm not asking that question, but that's a question that can go through their head. And then also that they are obviously questioning themselves throughout the journey of the show as well. And so, these straight women are able to experience that love and that passion and that sexuality and all those things without necessarily feeling like they are the target of those things that have to be, sort of managed. And so that's what I read in that analysis.
Interesting.
And I do think that that provides sort of freedom to explore maybe something they don't usually see. It also allows them to see men in a way that these two men allowing themselves to be sexualized and even the actors performing the job that they're doing to be sexually exploited, not in a negative way, but like expose themselves in a vulnerable way sexually on their own volition that we don't usually get to see men do. Certainly not in public. And those women don't usually see their men do that. So it may be out of their mind that men can have that capacity to do that anyway. Maybe that's just like my thought. I do think it's different because, generally, not always, but certainly generally, at least through my experience, the people who are doing the fetishizing are men who benefit a little bit more from the patriarchal system that we have than the women. Not a little bit more. They benefit a lot more than the women that are watching this show. But I don't mean to imply that the women that white women don't benefit from the patriarchal system that we live in. But these men are also perpetuating that same system that is harming themselves, and then obviously harming women, harming trans women, harming black trans women, harming black people. Like they're doing it all over. And I do think that a similar component is that sense of freedom that they're witnessing and want to be a part of, that they're drawn to. And I do think that by the same regard that maybe a straight woman would feel sort of witness or recognize a certain type of freedom in a gay couple that's like living their lives and swinging from the rafters, that that a man who's fetishizing trans folks, trans women in particular, I believe is drawn to, because I've heard in conversation, both in my own personal experience and then through friends as well and their experiences, that in conversation, a lot of times these men, whether they're fetishizing or whether they have whatever on the sexual spectrum it is, their proclivity to indulge with trans women, which could either be a fetish or not, or a little bit of a fetish or somewhere in between. These men oftentimes express being drawn to the freedom and admiring how we move about the world and we're unapologetic, and they love how we fight for our rights.
They can do a little more of that fighting themselves there. Thank you very much.
Yeah. But they are drawn to that, and I think that is a very human thing, to be drawn to somebody who fights for themselves. It's a shame that you're going to hold us down at the same time that you're admiring how well we fight, So that's the part of it about it that I don't respect. But that's my I categorize those two things.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think especially what you're saying about like how the women watching this can picture themselves in a way like it's like their bodies aren't involved at all. So it's like a fetishization, but it's also more of a fantasy almost like because
Uh-huh.
there's no world in which their body is there. There's no they couldn't take on this role. So it's sort of beyond that other kind of fetishization
Yeah.
where it's very much a
Yeah.
like I'm involved.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all really sexually weird. I think that's one thing I've learned the longer I talk to more people. Everybody's things are a little different, and I'm curious if you are listening to us right now and you are a straight person who's really into Heated Rivalry and you want to talk about what it turns you on about it or why you love it, we would love to hear. And if you're a queer person, if you're a lesbian and you're really into it, like let's talk about the erotics that are not based on our sexual orientations. Like what do we consume? Why do
Yeah.
we consume it? What turns you on? What turns you off? Write us, email us, leave a comment on this wherever you're watching it. We want to hear from you. Do you like Heated Rivalry? Is there another version of this for you? Is there, are there, well, I was about to say, are there straight guys out there watching like lesbian shows? And of course there are, but that's like porn produced for
That's
straight
porn.
men. Are there
Yeah.
straight guys who are reading like lesbian romance novels? I guess is more the question there. But I would love to hear from folks listening what your thoughts are on all of this.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, and yeah, now I want to go back and watch Heated Rivalry.
I'm
Let's
glad
close
that I
out.
brought this back. Yeah. Well, okay. I just want to mention before we close out that since we're talking about the erotics and sports so much, before we close out, right now, as we are taping this, we're getting ready for the Olympics. And if you're listening, the Olympics are going on right now. And there's one out of only 41 openly gay athletes at the 2026 Olympics is a guy named Connor McDermott Mostawi. He won the U.S. Olympic trials 2 weeks ago. He's going to be in the 1,000-meter speed skate. And fascinating, and unlike the folks at the heart of Heated Rivalry, he was never in the closet in the same way. He's a true trailblazer. I mean, I think in a lot of ways he's emblematic of this new generation that's coming up after us that like doesn't come out in the exact same ways or is never in the exact same ways. If you want to check out more about him, I'm really into him right now. There's a podcast called Duke's Download. Great interview with him. And so, Connor, if you're listening, we're wishing you the best of luck.
Yeah. That is really interesting. And I'm, not to dive back into conversation, but it is, as we talk about, gay people being out in professional sports, particularly the Olympics. Last week, several professional sports leagues preemptively outlawed trans people's participation in sports, and so it really does sort of juxtapose what might be a gay experience in professional sports with a trans experience in professional sports, and it makes my mind wonder. And I also remember seeing the statistic that a certain amount of, I think, a high number of LGBT people report going back into the closet in this particularly in this atmosphere, this administration that we're experiencing right now, this fascist administration that we're experiencing right now. And so I wonder what the impact is going to be on trans people who want to participate in sports, especially considering the number is already incredibly low. In the future, when we hear the Supreme Court ruling that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And I hope that more people do come out of the closet, because we know that there's plenty of them that are there participating in sports. But I would say, not that a bunch of athletes are listening to this, but I would hope that, listen, right now, there's not an overt effort by the government to detach gay people from professional sports, at least not publicly through legislation and Supreme Court action. So come out while you can, because we as trans people are being disenfranchised from every public area, including sports, not only professional sports, but school age sports, college sports, sports at the intermediate level, and then in elementary school and all club sports, like everywhere. And that's not going to result in more trans people participating in or coming out or any of that. And so, not to saying you have it so good, but like, while your government is focused on us and harming us, you better make the best of it.
Yeah, and if you're a straight person, a cis person who's in athletics as well, start thinking about these issues. Like, start caring about your trans teammates who may not be able to come out, your queer teammates. You have a role in all of this, and I know how hard it is to be a pro at anything. I mean, you and I both know, to make it to the elite level of being an artist, a writer, an athlete, you devote your life to it. It takes everything from you. And yet, at the end of the day, is it worth stabbing all of your teammates, your friends, your family members, your queer community in the back? I don't think so. So
who've also put in that same amount of work and dedication to get to where they are.
Who would love to dedicate their life to this, but are not allowed to, you know? So anyway, if we have any athletes who listen, you have a voice, you have a platform, and we're hoping you speak up.
Yeah, it's true. And remember that we are back here every single Tuesday, and you can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts on all of the platforms that I shall not name, but where we are on them. And of course, you can go over to my YouTube channel if you want to watch this, if you're not watching it now, but please like, subscribe, and share. Listen, I'm trying to build my subscriptions, and we want to build participation in this. And the more you interact with this clip here, the better it helps us find and expand our audience. Don't forget to also head over to allstore.com if you're interested in picking up this month's book, Sister Outsider. And we will see you next week. Bye.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
This podcast is part of Pride House Media, hosted by us, Peppermint and Hugh, produced and edited by Josh Rosenzweig, with original music composed by Nell Balaban.
If you enjoyed this episode, then don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And while you're there, leave us a rating and a review. It really helps others discover the show.
You can stay connected and join the conversation by following us at Peppermint 24/7 or write to us at questions@queer101podcast.com.
Thank you for listening. And remember, our history is your history. Stay proud, stay curious, and we'll see you next time on Queer 101.